Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Amy, for that introduction, and thanks, everyone, for being here, and thanks also to GroupLink for hosting these webinars. I hope everyone is enjoying the information presented, and hope you can get something from this. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm happy to be able to bring you some cool information about social media. So really, the idea here is that every one of you are probably dealing with social media at work. You probably have people that are currently accessing Facebook, Twitter, all kinds of things at work. And so the question I'd like to start out with is, how has social media changed your job function? How has it affected your organization? And how is your life different because of social media? So just think about that. Think about that to begin with. How is your job different because of social media? How is your organization different because of it? And how is your life different? So let's talk, to begin with, we're going to talk about some of the implications and concerns of social media usage at work. We're going to talk about the growth of social media. We're going to talk about how you can manage this social media growth. You know, we know that everybody's using it. Now, how do you manage it? And then we'll talk about some of the solutions that GWAVA provides to help you mitigate the risks of social media usage. So to begin with, you see here on the screen some of the things that you really have to be dealing with in your organization. We know that you've become more regulated. There's been recent laws and regulations that have been passed that have really changed the way that you need to work. You need to be able to comply with different regulations depending on your industry. For example, if you're in healthcare, you need to be worrying about HIPAA and high tech. If you're in financial, there's the Dodd-Frank Act, there's SEC regulations. And of course, for every organization, you need to deal with the federal rules of civil procedure. And what the FRCP deals with is that you need to be able to monitor and archive all of your electronic data. You need to be able to do this, and the reason being, well, there's a few reasons, but what FRCP outlines is that you need to do this in case of litigation. So you can prove what may have happened in your organization, and you can show and produce for litigation all of the electronic communications that you had. So with that being said, and we'll talk about this as we go through this presentation a little bit more, GWAVA developed Retain. That's the solution we have to help with this idea of unified archiving, to ensure that you're able to archive all of your electronic communications so that you can comply with these regulations, and then you can manage your information. So we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about some of these regulations. I wanted to touch on that a little bit more. So like I said, if you're in the financial sector, you have to deal with Dodd-Frank Act, SEC, SOX, FRCP, etc. If you're in healthcare, you've got HIPAA and high tech. Government, you've got FERPA and the Freedom of Information Act. And of course, all other industries deal with the FRCP. So once again, there are regulations that specify exactly what you need to be doing on social media with all of your electronic communications as well. And then to further that, Gartner has stated and has found that 75% of companies will have to produce messages for EDiscovery by the end of this year. So you probably haven't had to deal with EDiscovery or litigation. However, if you haven't, you will. So just be aware that that could be coming to your organization. And so you need to be prepared for that. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, is how you can be prepared to comply with these regulations that I've talked about, and then also be ready for EDiscovery. Okay, now there's this other idea here when it comes to your data. So, and this really applies when it comes to social media communications, instant message communications, email, all of that data. The idea is, and the challenge that you're facing, is that your data is growing at an alarming rate. Gartner found that digital business data is actually growing at a rate of 40 to 60% a year. So you need to be prepared for that. You've probably seen that in your organization, that your data has been growing, and how do you meet those increased data demands? It gets even worse because as your data grows, it becomes unstructured and unmanageable. It becomes redundant, outdated, trivial, really, whereas data really should be leveraged as an asset to your company. So as this grows and becomes unstructured, it actually becomes a liability and a risk to data loss. So the idea here is that you need to be able to manage your information. You need information governance practices. You need to be able to do that not just to comply with regulations and be prepared for e-discovery, but you need to do it just to be able to manage what's going on. And so we're going to talk about, once again, as I stated, a solution that GWAVA provides to be able to help you manage your electronic communications. Okay, so with that being said, we know that the focus of this session is social media. So, and you've probably all noticed this is probably stating the obvious, but it continues to grow. It's actually projected that there's going to be about 4.9 billion social media accounts and 2.4 billion social media users by 2016. So it just continues to grow. Even though we've seen exponential growth with social media, it will continue to grow at the rate that we've seen. And moving along a little bit more, you can see, we'll break it down a little bit further, that enterprise social media will continue to grow at a steady rate as well. We've probably all seen the announcements that Facebook has come out with Facebook at Work, an enterprise platform for Facebook to be able to use that in your organization. There's other enterprise social media that you probably are aware of and may be using. For example, Microsoft has Yammer, but that will continue to grow. And as you can see, the usage of that, this particular graph shows you how many minutes per day people are using on enterprise as opposed to consumer social media. So there are solutions out there for you to be able to use enterprise social media, and that will continue to grow along with consumer social media. So if you haven't already experienced it, just know that social media is coming to your workplace. That may be in the form of an enterprise solution that you deploy, or it may be just your employees accessing social media at work. And just to hit it home again, I wanted to just do a little comparison here to see that email accounts will continue to grow, both with consumer and corporate emails. It is something that grows. However, social media is going to continue to grow as well, especially in the next few years. So email is going to be around. People want to communicate using email. However, social media is now becoming a preferred way to communicate, even in the business environment. And of course, it's not limited to social media. Instant messaging is dominating the collaboration market as well. In fact, according to the Radicati Group, worldwide instant message accounts are expected to grow from about 3.5 billion in 2013 to over 4.5 billion by the end of the year 2017. This is an average growth rate of about 7%. And this slide shows actual total growth in all segments, whether that's public, enterprise, or mobile instant messaging. So with that being said, with all this information, and as I stated, it's kind of stating the obvious, just know that your employees will be using social media and instant messaging at work. If they're not using it now, they will be, and they will probably be demanding it. And with that being said, there are many organizations that are not doing what is needed to be prepared for these new forms of collaboration and the risks they bring. So just know that this is coming to your organization if you haven't already experienced it, both social media and instant messaging, and you need to be able to find a way to manage this, manage your electronic communication and manage your data. Now, it's kind of surprising, given all the regulations we've talked about and the ways in which we collaborate, it's actually alarming to see that most organizations, if they archive at all, still only archive email. I would imagine that most of you on this presentation have an email archiving solution, or if you don't have one, you're probably looking towards getting one. However, I would imagine most of you aren't archiving or monitoring Facebook or instant messaging or mobile communications. And that's dangerous. It's actually risky. You need to be able to be ahead of that curve. You need to be able to monitor and archive these kind of communications so that you're not caught unprepared. So in case of litigation or in case of just an accusation, you'd be able to go back and see what has happened. And then there's also this approach of that many organizations take of just completely cutting off social media and instant messaging. And that actually, in some ways, is a mistake. And the reason being is that if you cut off those lines of communication, if you prevent your employees from accessing social media at work or using instant messaging, they're going to find a way around that, meaning they'll probably just use their own device, their smartphone, or maybe their tablet, and access those things outside of your network. And if that's the case, they're at work still to accessing that, you don't really have control over what they're doing. And so the idea here is to allow your employees to communicate in the ways that they want to communicate, but to be able to have safeguards in place to help you manage what they're doing, to be able to monitor their communications. So let's talk a little bit about Retain. So Retain is the solution that GWAVA provides to help you manage all this electronic communication. And as you can see from this slide here, Retain archives all communications in one central location. And that's why we call it unified archiving. We don't require that you have multiple solutions. You don't need a archive solution for email in addition to social, in addition to mobile. There's one solution for all types of collaboration, and all of this communication is archived in one central location. So let's take as an example that you have multiple email systems that you're running in your organization. Say you're currently on GroupWise and you have some people in your organizations that have migrated to Exchange. Well, we'd be able to archive your GroupWise emails and your Exchange emails in one central archive. And you wouldn't need to worry about what solution, what email system one of your users is running when it comes to the archive. When you go to search messages, you'd be able to go back, perform a search, and all messages that pertain to that search will come back, whether that's an email message, a social media message, or a mobile message. And so the idea here is that it makes your life much simpler. You don't have to have those multiple solutions. And with Retain, you'll be able to extend the life of your existing hardware investment. You'll be able to reduce server loads and storage costs. And you'll be able to archive your message data in an easily retrievable format. Furthermore, you'll be able to provide your end users with access to the archived data. You can increase your email system performance and employee productivity. And if you're ever involved in litigation or EDiscovery, your legal fees and EDiscovery costs are greatly reduced because Retain includes EDiscovery tools, includes search tools, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the idea here is that you have all of these types of ways that your employees are communicating: email, social media, mobile, and they're also searching on the web. And what Retain will do is it will archive all of that communication, all of that data into one central archive. And recently, we introduced Retain Social. So about 2 years ago, we introduced Retain Social for Facebook and Twitter. And what it would do is it would archive those messages as employees were accessing Facebook and Twitter at work. However, just in the past couple of months, we introduced Retain Social, I guess we call it the second generation. And what Retain Social does now is it's more than just archiving. What it does is it actively monitors and archives social media, instant messaging, and web searches. So if your employees are using Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Yammer, those social media platforms, we'll be able to monitor what they do. And the same goes for instant messaging communications with Link, Google Talk, Yahoo Messenger, and AOL Instant Messenger. So any type of communication they have on those instant messaging platforms and on social media, we'll be able to monitor what they're doing. You can, in your organization, you can allow them to use it, but there will be monitoring in place so that you can create policies to prevent your employees from sharing certain things that you don't want to be shared, or from posting things that may be inappropriate or violent. And we'll talk about that a little bit further. But the idea is that you can create policies and you can enforce these policies using retained social. So let's say, for example, that you have a project that your employees are working on, and you do not want them posting anything to their social media accounts, let's say to Facebook. What you can do is you can set up a rule, and I'll show you in a moment how that works exactly, but you can set up a rule in retained social that will prevent them from posting that to their social media accounts while they're on the network. So if they're accessing their Facebook account on the network, retained social monitors what they're doing and will prevent them from posting things that you don't want them to be posting. And there's a couple ways to do that. One, retained social comes with a default pattern matching list. So what it does is it takes industry standards and it will be able to, by default, block certain things that would apply to your industry. So when you initially set up retained social, what you would do is choose the industry, save that, and then it will apply these default pattern matching lists. So when a person goes to post something, say it violates something that has to do, if you're in financial, with SEC regulations, retained social will prevent that from being posted. And then also there's a text search. So if you want to prevent certain words, as I stated, maybe a project that people are working on, retained social would be able to block certain words from being posted. And the great thing is that it looks like it's coming from Facebook or Twitter or Yammer or LinkedIn or the instant message as well. So if a person goes on, they try to tweet something out, a pop-up will appear within Twitter saying that this cannot be posted based on your company policies, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And then the other nice thing is that as an employee tries to post something like that, and an administrator is actually notified of the posts that violate policy. So you can set that up so that when a person posts something that violates policy, an administrator will be notified of that. And going along a little further, Retained Social has a corporate social media access portal. And what this does is, based on groups that you set in Retained Social, your employees can access your social media account without having to log in. So what you'll do is you'll set up a group in Retained Social, say that's your marketing team. You can have all your marketing team in that group, and based on their login credentials using the directory integration, when they log in to their machine at the beginning of the day, it's going to know who they are, and Retained Social will allow them to go right onto the social media account. Say it's a Facebook account, it's your corporate Facebook account. When they access that, they don't have to log in. They'll just be able to automatically be logged in as an administrator of that account because of this corporate social media access portal. So once again, making it easier for the employees that you want to access your corporate social media makes it easier for them to do that without having to log in. And then the other great thing is, if you have remote employees that are accessing or that work from home or work on the road, there's actually a workstation agent that can be put onto their machine. It's used for a Windows machine or a Mac OS. And what this agent does is it sits on their machine and it monitors what they're doing. So once again, if they try to access social media or post on social media things that they're not supposed to, that violate policy, Retained Social will prevent that. And then, of course, it will also archive it in that central archive. Then furthermore, you have this search. So with Retained Social, what it does is any of these particular things, the Wikipedia, Yahoo, Bing, Google, and YouTube searches, when your employees access that, whether that's by visiting yahoo.com or by using maybe a search toolbar, everything they type in there is going to be monitored and archived. So once again, if they're searching for a term that you do not want them searching for, Retained Social will be able to monitor that and prevent them from searching that term. And then even if that term, and this applies to the social media instant messaging, does not get posted or is not able to be searched, Retain will archive that. So you'll be able to see what has been tried to be posted, even if it's not posted. And of course, like I said, it's monitored so that it will be prevented from being searched or posted. Now, let's see. Now, going further, as I stated, I talked a lot about the monitoring side of it. And all of those communications, everything that people are doing on your network or off the network, if you're using that agent, is monitored and archived when it comes to social media instant messaging and web searches. And of course, as I stated, they're archived as well. So they're monitored and they're archived. And some things just to take note of is that this archive, as I stated before, is unified. So all of these communications that we talked about are archived in that central location, in addition to email and mobile communications. And all the communications are actually archived using intelligent threading. And so what that means is that messages are archived in context. So let's say that somebody is on Facebook and they have a Facebook conversation. And you go back and you do a search. When you do that search, you'll actually be able to see the entire message string. You'll be able to see what was posted and how people communicated back and forth. And the great thing there is that then you'll be able to see that in context and see what was stated and why. And with the archive, it'll help you be in compliance with regulations. And once again, those regulations like FINRA and SEC, FRCP, and the HIPAA. And like I stated before, this is a unified archive where all your email, social media, instant messaging, and mobile communications are archived, and you can grant rights to different users. So you'll have admin rights, and the admins have the ability to search the entire archive, place litigation holds, export, restore email messages, and redact and perform other EDiscovery functions. And then users have access to their own personal archive as well. So they can search their own archive. They can restore the email messages directly to their live inbox, which also saves your IT department time and effort. So let me show you a little bit here how Retain Social performs. I talked a lot about the ideas here. So here's an example. In this particular screen grab here, an employee was trying to post something about GWAVA. And in this example, I had created a rule where GWAVA or an employee cannot be posting about GWAVA. And so as they try to post on that, the message dialog will come up saying this message is blocked due to policy violation. So that message was not able to be posted on their on Facebook, which now helped you enforce policy. And like I said, it looks like it's actually coming from Facebook. And this also applies to Twitter and Yammer and instant messaging as well. And let's see, this is kind of small. I apologize for that. The screenshot's a little small for you to see. Hopefully you can see it okay. But what this is the idea here is here's where you edit the rules within Retain Social. Here's the Retain Social Compliance Proxy. This is a screenshot of what it looks like. So here's where you'd be able to edit rules. Some examples of the rules are being able to stop dangerous attachments. You've also got Safe Chat, which is you've got job searches or headhunting risks. You've got something that has to do with racism, drugs, etc. So there's a rule set here that was applied by default based on the industry that you chose that prevented certain things from being posted. Now you can create rules that apply to all platforms, or you can make them for specific systems. So let's say that you have Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and your employees are all using those. And you want to apply rule sets to Facebook and Twitter, but you're okay with them posting certain things to LinkedIn. So what you do is you could create a specific rule set that only applied to Facebook and Twitter, but you could allow everything to be done on LinkedIn. The idea here is that you have granular ability to create different rule sets based on the platform that you choose. And then within the rule, you can actually choose to have a few actions taken. So if you create a rule, as we stated before, that maybe you don't want them posting about your company or about a certain project. So you can create a rule that says any post about this project will be blocked. And you can see here from the drop-down that there's a few items that you can do. You can, from that rule, you can stamp a message. You can mark it as unwanted content, as a virus. You can report it. You can block, alert, and report, block and report, alert, and report. So the idea here is that you have a few options. So going back, if an employee tries to post to Facebook and it's something about the company and you don't want them posting that, you can actually choose to block that post, alert an administrator, and create a report on that, all in one simple action. Or another example that is really cool that you can do is you can actually stamp a message. So you can create a rule set that anytime anybody posts to social media or uses instant messaging, that there's a stamp, and it can be before or after a message. It could be an example of something like, this post is a personal post and does not reflect the views or opinions of XYZ company. Something as simple as that. You can actually put a message that will be stamped on everything that your employee posts as they're posting on social media in the organization. Okay, so moving along, here's the different examples for the criteria that you can set for each rule. So some of the rules include text search, as I stated before, so you can actually specifically state text that you do not want people posting, like a keyword or maybe your company name or a project name. Then there's the pattern matching, and this is based on industry. You'd select a pattern list, so you can create multiple pattern lists depending on how you'd want to set that up. So if it matches a pattern that is known terms that known malicious or inappropriate terms, you could do that. You can also specify by service type, application type, and then each rule each rule applies to a different platform. So you can create a rule that applies to Facebook and Twitter and instant messaging, or you can apply a rule just to instant messaging or just to Facebook, etc. The idea here is that you can apply different rules to different platforms. And as you can see there, these different rules are shown per platform. And here's an example of pattern matching. You can use a list. So here's some of the lists that you can use. You can use aggression, eating disorders, SEC and FINRA terms, racism, etc. You can see there that there's a lot of different patterns that you can use, and you can apply those and help to block those without having to think of every single search term that or every single term that you'd want to stop from being posted. And like I said, retain social include the default database of what type of messages that would be blocked. And if you'd like to, you can actually ignore certain strings. So, yeah, depending on the pattern that you use, maybe there's certain things that that pattern might be stopping that you want to allow. You can do that there by posting strings to ignore. The other thing to take note of is this can be done, these rules can be done on a global or per user basis. So if you want to be able to apply this to your entire organization, you can. However, if you want to exclude certain people, say you want to exclude the president of your company or the CEO or maybe the owner from filtering what they're posting, you can do that. You can exclude them from these rules. So as I stated, it can be granular, it can be global. Now here's an example of the text search. As I stated, you can type any kind of string in there that you'd like. Any kind of message, any kind of word that you don't want people posting, you can do that here in the text search. So once again, if you don't want them posting about your company, about projects, whatever keyword that you want to put in there, you could post that, and as people try to post to social media, it will prevent them from doing that. And just to review that, the idea here, once again, is to allow your employees to communicate with the collaboration tools that they want. We know that people prefer to communicate using social media. We've all seen that. We all do. We know that instant messaging is a great way to communicate instantly. But this solution helps you to be able to allow that and also protect your organization. And once again, here's where you could apply the rule based on application type. So if you want to allow your employees open and free access to certain platforms and not others, you can apply that to just certain platforms or not others. And here you can see quickly all the different platforms that are supported. Now here you have one other concept that I realized I didn't talk about until this screen, missed a little bit here, and that is that Retain Social, in addition to monitoring content that your employees post onto social media and instant messaging and web search, there's actually a portion of Retain Social that monitors, filters, and blocks websites, URLs. So if you have certain URLs that you don't want your employees accessing, Retain Social will prevent your employees from accessing those sites. And you can customize and say exact sites that you don't want. So let's say that you don't want them accessing a gambling site, so gamblingsite.com. You can actually specify that specific website that you don't want them going to that website. Or there's categories of websites as well. So as you can see here, there's a number of categories. If you wanted to prevent your employees from going onto travel sites during work, you can do that. You want them to not go to fashion sites. Whatever the case may be, you can see that there's a number of categories, and Retain Social will realize that if they're going to a site that meets one of these categories, Retain Social will prevent your employees from doing that. So that's something that you can set up as well in Retain Social to be able to prevent your employees from accessing websites that you don't want them to access. Once again, giving you an all-around protection from what your employees are accessing, and preventing those pitfalls, those risks from what an employee could be accessing at work that could potentially create a problem for your organization. Now, each one of these categories has subcategories as well. So if in the screenshot I expanded that, you'd see that there are additional subcategories. So if you wanted to allow, let's say that on sports, if you wanted to allow certain types of sports but not others, you could do that under the subcategories. Okay. And then here's an example of the corporate social media access portal. And as I stated, this allows your employees to access and post to corporate social media accounts without having to log into that account. And this is done here. So what you do is you'd go in, you'd be able to configure a new account, you'd put in the credentials for that account, and then you'd apply what group can access that account. And so now if an employee is a part of that group, they can access that Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Yammer, etc., those kind of accounts without having to log in, as long as you've configured that here and made that person a member of that group. And that's managed over here on the users and groups. You can see that on the side here of Retain. Now, going along here, here's an example of the archiving with Retain Social. And as I stated before, everything is monitored and then it's archived and retained. So here's an example of a typical archive. You can see here that it has social media posts for Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Yammer, as well as instant messaging, Google Talk, and the Google searches are there as well. Yahoo searches, Yahoo Instant Messengers there, YouTube searches, AOL chats, Wikipedia searches, and Bing searches. All of that is archived, as you can see, in one central archive. And your users can access their own personal archive, or the admin can access the entire archive. and messages can be easily searched from that archive. So if a user wants to search their own personal archive, they can. The results come back here. And if an administrator wants to search the entire archive, they can. So when a search is done, say for a certain search term here, we did a search term of test. What happens here is all communications are returned, including social media, instant messaging, web searches, email, and mobile messages are come into one central archive. And now end users can access their own personal archive and can perform basic functions based on the rights that they're granted. So for example, with email, they can restore an email or forward and export depending on the rights that they have. Other named users, such as administrators, HR, or auditors, can be granted access to the entire archive and can perform other functions. As you can see here, they can place a litigation hold on messages, they can tag a message, they can forward a message, export it, restore, perform redaction. And one other thing that's great is that you can actually take this set of search results and export it to a standalone archive viewer. So you can take this subset of your archive, put it onto a DVD or a CD or a jump drive, and give it to an external team, say an auditor or maybe legal team. So now they have that without having to give them the access to your entire archive. If you don't want them to, they could have a subset of that archive and they can search through that and they can perform redaction and be ready for a regulatory investigation or e-discovery. Now, once again, going back to the search, if a person types in a search term, you can see all kinds of communications are returned. Up at the top, you have some Facebook communication, Facebook messaging. You have some Gmail messages. You have Facebook. You have LinkedIn, Yammer, some instant messaging, or excuse me, some text messages, LinkedIn message, and some email messages as well. So the idea here is that you don't have to go out and search all these different platforms. You don't have to go to one solution and search for your mobile messages. Go to another solution to search for email, and maybe even another for social media. You have the ability to search everything from one central archive. And then let's go a little further here. Let me show you, here's an example of intelligent threading. So when messages are archived within Retain, they're archived using intelligent threading, which means that they're archived in context. So this screen grab here shows an example of two people communicating. One is within your organization, the other is outside of your organization. They're communicating. You'll be able to see the entire message thread in context, so that when you go back and do a search and you want to see what has been going on, you can see that and see it in context to know what has been happening. Here's a little example of this little diagram. Shows you kind of the idea here, a brief overview, maybe not so brief, overview of Retain Social and how it works. So what happens is, as a message comes across, Retain Social looks at that message, captures it, analyzes it, uses your policies to be able to review them and alert management or alert named users based on if that post can be done. If the post is not allowed, it's blocked. And whether or not the post is allowed or not, it is pushed over and it's archived using that intelligent threading. And it's tied to a user. All your metadata is saved. It's in a unified format and it's stamped, and there's deduplication. So that message comes across with all the data that you need. Then it's placed into Retain archive and it's indexed. And now you have the ability to look at that archive, do a search, place the litigation holds, redaction, report, etc. So this is all what you can do within Retain. And then, of course, you can export, you can save messages, etc. And this is just showing some of the ways in which Retain Social can help you to ensure that your message system is secure, that your employees, even though they can access social media, that they are protected from posting inappropriate or policy violating posts, and those are all archived in one central archive. And once again, there's a number of options for deployment. Retain Social integrates with your firewall to monitor, filter, and block traffic, and this applies to internet traffic and web content. So what it does is it actually uses an ICAP protocol. So if your firewall has an ICAP protocol, Retain Social will actually integrate directly with that firewall, and that's how it monitors. So as traffic comes in, it goes through the proxy, the Retain Social compliance proxy. It'll check to see if it violates any policies, if it's something that matches any of the patterns that you've created, and then it will allow that post to go out or come in, and it will archive it as well. And the other thing that's great is Retain Archive communicates directly with the Retain Social Compliance Proxy to archive that. And as I stated before, this can be done on the network via your firewall, or it can be done off the network via the workstation agent. And no matter how it's deployed, it can be archived in the central location in Retain. A couple other things to take note of. Retain Social can be deployed on-premise. In your organization, if you choose to do that, you could just spin up a server for Retain Social that would integrate with your firewall, and then it would archive there. Or you can do that in the GWAVA cloud. And we call that GWAVA Cloud Archiving. It delivers the same monitoring and archiving as Retain does on-premise, but you don't have to worry about the hardware, administration, maintenance, and system support costs. And we've actually found that on average, cloud services save about 35% over on-premise solutions. And of course, it's scalable, so you only use and pay for what you need when you need it. And so you don't, once again, with the cloud, you don't have to worry about supporting that. We will do that for you, implementing and upgrading that. That's all done through our GWAVA Cloud services. Now we're about at the end here. We're getting close to time. I just wanted to summarize here, and then it looks like we have a few questions. Once again, if you do have questions that I didn't get to, that I didn't answer as we're going through, please feel free to put those in the Q&A or the chat. I'll get to those here. But before we get that, I just wanted to remind everyone that the idea here is that you want to be able to allow your employees to access social media, to be able to use their mobile devices. We didn't talk about mobile as very much today, but that's a topic for another day. But you want to be able to give your employees the ability to communicate in the ways in which they want to communicate. But you want to also have oversight, and that's the idea with Retain. You can monitor and archive these kinds of communications to ensure that you're protected. This real-time monitoring and archiving of social media, instant messaging, and web search data allows you to give your employees the access that they demand and provide protection for them and your organization. And what's great, too, is that by investing in Retain today, you can start utilizing the portions that you need. If you want email archiving today, you can use that today. If you want social media archiving, monitoring and archiving tomorrow, you can implement that without having to deploy another solution. And of course, Retain has powerful e-discovery and publishing tools so that if you're ever involved in e-discovery or litigation, you can easily be prepared for that and save your organization a lot of time and money. So if you'd like more information, feel free to give us a call at 866-GO-GWAVA. Visit us at guava.com. You can even download a free 30-day trial of this solution to see how it worked for you at guava.com/download. And one other thing that I didn't mention is if you want to play around with this solution a little bit and see how it'll work for you without deploying it, you can go to demo.guava.com and you'll be able to try out Retain Social in a sandbox format, play with it, see how it works. So let's move on to some question and answer. It looks like we do have a few questions here. One of the questions is, I may be getting ahead of this. Company-owned accounts are clearly included, but how do you address employee-owned accounts? And do you have an acceptable use policy that addresses employee use of social media? Great, good question here. And that was probably asked, it looks like it was asked a little earlier in my presentation, so I hope I answered it as I went through, but retained social, just to reiterate, retained social applies to any kind of social media account or instant message account or web searches that an employee is accessing on your network. So if an employee is accessing, say, for example, Twitter, and it's their personal Twitter account, but they're accessing it on your network, retained social will monitor and archive what they're doing. And to answer your other question, is the acceptable use policy of social media. We actually do have a sample policy. Let me grab that really quick, and I'll put that through in the Q&A here. Give me just a moment. I'm going to find the URL for that. Hopefully I can find it here. I'll find that here really quick and put that through in the chat here. While I'm doing that, once again, if you have any questions, feel free to put those through. I think we got all the questions here. Let's see. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm finding that. But yes, we do have a sample social media policy that I can give you here. So if you want to download that, feel free to do that. We've created that to be able to help you. Oh, here we go. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not all-encompassing, and it is just a sample, but put this through here. I'll put that through in the chat here, all participants. So if you want to visit that landing page there, just fill out, there's a small form, just fill that out and you'll get access to that sample social media policy. And basically it's something that we've looked at across industries to see what should and should not be posted on social media. And anyway, so feel free to use that. So it looks like all the questions we have for now. Once again, if there's any questions that I didn't address, feel free to contact me directly. Let me put that slide back up here with my contact information. Feel free to contact me at qmangus@guava.com, or you can even follow me on Twitter at qmangus. Feel free to tweet me directly if you'd like, if we didn't answer any questions that you had here. And once again, if you have further questions or would like more information on how retained social can be used for you, feel free to visit us at guava.com.